Hi everyone, it's Dan and I love gadgets. It's summer, so I'm looking slightly less pale than I usually do. Now, shout out to this guy who pointed that out to me. Yes, I really am that white. But not now because I went outside. So today I'm going to be comparing the Amazfit Bip and the Amazfit Stratos. Two Amazfit smartwatches, very different price ranges, very different design, very different everything really. I have two fairly popular videos on these watches now, reviews and stuff, so people have asked me which one they think they should get, which one is better for certain things and not other things. Anyway, basically I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about these two watches, and I'm going to try and help you decide which one you should get and why. Now, the first and most obvious difference between these two watches is, the design. One is a lot bigger than the other. We're going to take a closer look at the design of both watches. I'm going to tell you basically what I think of them both and what the strengths and weaknesses of the design are, because it's very important when you're wearing something all day that it kind of feels comfortable, it looks good. So yeah, let's take a look first at the Amazfit Bip, shall we? So here is the Amazfit Bip. As you can see, it's a very, very small smartwatch. It's very thin. It's got a kind of square rectangular design, and it fits very comfortably on your wrist. It's got one manual button here, which kind of activates the screen, and then you can just swipe across to unlock it, like so. And then you have all of your menus and etc, etc. Now, the main advantage of the Amazfit Bip is that it's very thin. As you can see, it fits perfectly on my wrist, and my wrist is very, very skinny, so I did used to worry about smartwatches, whether they would fit, whether they would be comfortable on my wrist, but the Amazfit Bip is basically like, barely notice it even if I wear it all day. Yeah, so basically the advantage of the design is that it's really light, really thin, and you won't really notice it if you wear it for a long time. Now, the bad part is basically that it doesn't really look that special. It doesn't look very advanced, it doesn't look very new. I mean, it just looks like a basic kind of smartwatch, and that's basically what it is. I mean, it has a lot of features and it's very good value, but it does look fairly basic on your wrist. It's not going to stand out. People aren't going to ask questions about it and be like, oh my god, that looks cool, can I have a go with that? So yeah, it's not going to stand out. If you want something that looks really, really cool and really, really modern, and like, you know, the Apple Watch and the Samsung watches, then, you know, this isn't going to do that. It's comfortable, it's small, it's light, but it just doesn't really stand out. It doesn't really make me go wow. Now, let's move on to the Amazfit Stratos, which is a very different beast altogether. So the Stratos is a much bigger, much larger than the Bip. It's got a much larger screen, so it can fit more information. It's got 3 manual controls, one which will brighten up the screen and unlock it. Then you can just swipe across and to have all of your stuff. The other one can kind of control up or down, like selections, and I'm not really sure what the other one does, this one. It just seems to be there for the sake of it. Now, the great thing about the Stratos is that it looks great. I think it looks great on any person's wrist. It just kind of stands out. The materials are very, very high quality. It is partly made out of metal, which obviously indicates some kind of premium quality product, unlike the Bip, which is mostly plastic and rubber. The screen is very big. Like I said, it's a round circular screen, and I do prefer circular screens for watches. I just think it looks much more better, it looks much more classy, and looks much more like a watch. The strap, again, is very comfortable, and it's replaceable, so you can get a metal strap or a different color strap if you want. Now, while this looks amazing, and I have had people come up to me and like, oh, that looks so cool, what is that? And can I try it? Can I see it? So it will stand out. However, the negatives of that is that the watch is fairly large, and like I say, I have skinny wrists. This is slightly too big for my skinny wrists to wear constantly. I do notice it. It's heavier. If you wear over a jumper or a suit, it will stick out. Try to wear it sleeping, because it does sleep tracking. And I personally found it a bit too uncomfortable to sleep with. Now, I think this is mostly because I have, like I say, thin wrists like a little girl. So that makes the issue which is more of an issue for me personally. But people with thicker wrists who are used to wearing thicker watches, then that won't be as much of an issue. But it is a large watch, it's a thick watch, especially compared to the Bip. It's probably about 50% more thickness than the Bip, so it is significant, and you'll need to decide whether you are comfortable with that. Positive is that it looks great, and it is really feels like a premium product. Now, I've mentioned briefly the screens on both of these watches. Now I'm going to go into a bit more detail on that, because I think it's very important for a smartwatch. For the screen, basically, is what you can be looking at, it's what other people are going to be looking at. So let's start with the Bip. Now, the Bip has a reflective color screen. It's 1.28 inches, and it's got a resolution of 176 by 176. Now, that is fairly basic for a smartwatch in general. However, considering the price of this watch and considering, well, you'll see later, but how long the battery lasts, then that is still pretty good. I mean, you can tell it's not super HD, it doesn't look the same as your phone screen, but it's more than enough. I mean, it just has to show some basic data, it's not pixelated. It does a perfectly fine job of displaying the information, the colors do stand out, and actually it works better in direct light than the other more advanced smartwatches that I've used. Like I say though, you can tell that it's not super HD, there's a limit to what it can do. It won't be able to display super fine details or images or stuff like that. But I think for the price and considering its battery life, having a full color screen that can last this long is pretty good. Now, on the other hand, the Amazfit Stratos, again, very different. A huge screen compared to the Bip, very big circular round screen. It looks amazing. It's a reflective LCD screen. It's 1.34 inches. It's got a resolution of 300 by 320. So that's nearly double the resolution of the Bip. And you can tell the difference straight away. It can display much more finer details, much more information on its screen. And yeah, so it does look a lot better. However, actually for both watches, I should say that if you are wearing the watch and you do the motion to look at it like that, then the backlight will automatically turn on, which is great. Doesn't always work, but does work most of the time, which I think is a cool feature. The downside of the Stratos is that it is difficult to see in direct sunlight. I mean, that's not too much of an issue because rarely are you just pointing it directly at the sun and staring at it. It doesn't quite rival like an iPhone or a Samsung phone screen, but considering the small size, considering the price, the screen is pretty good. Moving on, I'm going to talk about the sensors that both of these watches have and kind of what they can track and how well they do it. Obviously, if you buy a smartwatch, most of the time you're doing it because you want to track something like your steps, your heart rate, your health in general, as well as all of the other stuff. But I mean, that's a fairly important thing. Let's start with the Bip, once again. It has a heart rate sensor, a barometer, a gyroscope, a compass, and an accelerometer. So yeah, it can basically track your steps, your heart rate, how many calories you burn, how far you've gone in a day, and your sleep quality. So, I mean, it's fairly extensive. For the price of this watch, that is fairly extensive. That pretty much matches up to, well, much more expensive smartwatches. It certainly matches up to the Amazfit Stratos, which tracks almost exactly the same things. It has exactly the same number of sensors, but the Bip has a lot of sensors in this tiny, tiny little body, which I think is amazing. Now, I have found that when I've used this watch to track steps, that it's not been as accurate as some of my other watches. The Bip would always detect slightly more steps, basically. So, for example, if my friends had detected 10,000 steps, then the Bip would tell me that I have done 10,400 or something like that. So it's not hugely inaccurate, but I don't think it is as accurate as some other smartwatches and even your phone. I think it detects when I move my arm sometimes, just not walking, but if I'm moving my arm, it might detect a step every now and then. Now, the Stratos, like I said, tracks almost exactly the same things. In fact, it does track exactly the same things. It tracks your sleep, steps, calories, heart rate, what else is there? Distance, that's the other one, and your speeds. So all these kind of things that these sensors can track. Now, the difference between them is that, well, for a start, I do think this is slightly more accurate. Like I say, when it comes to steps, this one will detect the steps slightly more accurately than the Bip, as far as I can see. Now, what the Stratos can do, which the Bip can't, is basically display the data from these sensors right on the screen and in quite a lot of detail. You can only really get basic data on the Bip, like your heart rate, and it will tell you how many steps you've done in a day, and that's about it. To get any more detail, you need to connect to the app and then look on there. But for the Stratos, you can look at quite detailed data over trends, even trends over the whole day, the whole week, months, because it has that larger screen and much more responsive touch screen and just easier to use, much more data available, higher quality screen, allows you to have basically just more intricate details on the screen straight away without having to connect to the app or do anything. You can even see a map of like where you've ran or where you've walked. I think this is better for tracking because it's more accurate and it allows you to see the data more clearly, more quickly, and more intricately. But considering the price of this, this is definitely excellent value. And if you just wanted something that tracks pretty well and you didn't want to spend much more, then yeah, this is better value, but this is slightly better, if that makes sense. Right, so the next thing I'm going to talk about, and it is quite important, it might not seem that important, but it is, it's the battery life between these two watches. Now, it is very important because one of these watches has an amazing battery life that is almost unbelievable, and it is the Bip. The Bip has a battery life that's almost defies logic. 45 days is what Amazfit claims, and I can pretty much back that up in my use. I've had it now for well, like 2 or 3 months, and I've only had to charge it fully twice. So yeah, it's worked so well. I barely ever have to worry about the battery being dead. I don't have to charge it every day like some smartwatches do, or even every week. I just pick it up and wear it, And even if it does need to charge, it literally takes like half an hour and then you're good for 45 days. That's ridiculous. That makes this so like easy to use. You know, you don't, the thing I hated about smartwatches before I ever got them was the idea of having to charge my watch just to look at the time. Why don't I just wear a normal watch? You know, you don't want to walk around with a dead watch on your wrist for absolutely no reason. But with this is why I like this watch so much, because of that battery life, and it is amazing. It will go down quicker if you use the GPS, so be aware of that. If you want to use the GPS, then that will reduce the battery life, but when you're not using it, just turn it off and the battery life will still be epic. Now, compared to the Stratos, well, I mean, the Stratos cannot compete with that. It's got a battery life of about 5 days, which for its size and what it can do, and considering the size of the screen and all the other stuff it can do, that is pretty impressive compared to the Apple Watch, which you need to charge every day. Ridiculous. So if you're looking for a smartwatch that you just don't have to worry about charging it, then this is the best out of any smartwatch ever. But, you know, you got the limitations of the screen and, you know, limitations in tracking and all that stuff. Now, the main other differences between these two watches, I'm just going to go through them quite quickly. This is waterproof to 50 meters. Amazing. Amazing for swimmers, amazing for surfers, amazing for anyone who's going to be going in water and you want to still track all your calories, your steps, steps. Why would you be stepping in water? You want to track your calories, your speed, your distance, or you just want to look at the time and you don't want to ruin your watch by putting it in water. This is perfect. It will survive in a swimming pool. I've gone swimming with it. I've put it in water